Yo, what up, what up? Welcome to Unmastered, the podcast where I get to chat to the contributors to the hip hop culture. The culture that we love, the culture that we live for. I'm your host, Attenders in Bando, aka the Ultra Poet. And today I'm hosting a man. I'll not say a lot about him. I'll say it later because there's a whole thing about him that we're gonna talk about. There's a lot. This is probably gonna be long or something, but ladies and gentlemen, McPotar, please introduce yourself.
It is indeed a pleasure and an honor to be on a show that I listen to on a regular basis. I'm an avid listener of the Mastered Show. Thank you, Tatenda, for bringing me to the show. For those who don't know me, my name is McPotar, making creative philosophy of truth and reason, making creative philosophy of truth and reason. And that's pretty much what I do. It encompasses what I do. I'm always looking for ways to be creative. And one of the outlets that I use is animation, poetry, hip hop. I write blogs and a whole lot of other stuff. I'm always interested in what's happening in the creative side of things, especially in hip hop and culture.
You had the man. He has his hands on a lot of things. You'd be surprised if you hear some of the things that he's been working on, and we'll talk about that later. Before we get into a lot of this, you said you do animation, do a lot of things, but the premises of the Unmastered podcast is that I talk to rappers, producers, and anyone who's doing something like in the hip hop fraternity. Let's focus on that first. McPotar, you are a person who definitely goes by different names or stage names or alter egos at times, right? Now, take us into the journey. How did you start rap? How did you feel, when and how did you fall in love with rap music, with hip hop music, and you were like, I want to do this, and how has that journey been for you before we touch on any other thing?
One thing I've always liked about your platform, Tatenda, is that you talk about poetry and you talk about hip hop. And to me, they are related. Because when I was in primary school, I used to write poetry that used to be shared amongst teachers in the school to a point where they decided to enter me into contests and competitions without my knowledge. And I'd only find out when I win. Of course, as I got older, they started telling me, enter this competition, enter that one. And I was inclined to hip hop because of that, because I could tell the pattern that the way these people write, the only difference is they've got a beat and they've got a melody. And I think in those days, I must have come across a program on TV where somebody described rap as rhythm and poetry. So that stuck with me. And I've always been a person, you know me, apart from this public podcast, in our private conversations, who likes to optimize how much reach I can have with a medium, right? So even though I was a poet, I could see how there was less and less of poetry on radio. This was when I was probably in grade 5, grade 6, by the way. But I'd already seen that there was less and less poetry on radio, but there was rap on radio. So I decided to make that switch to hip hop. And I said, okay, so the only way my poetry can go mainstream would probably be to do rap. So me and my friends started rapping. And when I was in Form 1, I had my first recording at Moonlight Studios in Bulawayo. And it was on cassette tape. And I took it to school. I thought my friends would be happy for me, but they trolled the heck out of me. They said I'd never be able to do this and so forth. And in retrospect, I think, of course, the quality of what I was doing was not like how it is now. So I understand that they might have been comparing me with other people. But throughout my high school life, I was rapping. I was known for rap. I was known as the guy who's at the corner of the class writing bars, or you could find bars at the back of my geography notebook, science notebooks. Then there are some books I couldn't do that because there are some teachers who check if you did the right work and they can hit you. And at one point when I was in Form 4, again, my poetry anthology started to be spun around the school, to be moved around the school. I think I gave a girl and she gave another girl, and and it ended up circulating, and people were coming to me and saying, I've read your poetry, and so forth, to a point where some jealous dudes, they tore the cover of a certain diary that I had. That diary, it was decorated with I put a CD on it, like a plaque, and it had a lot of artistic things. I used glue on that diary and I covered it in a certain way. And I think this other guy didn't like it. But that's my early journey with hip hop. And I have to say, this early journey of being trolled or people disrespecting what I do, because it defined how I stand up for what I do in later life. But yeah, that's my journey with poetry and hip hop, by the way. And I always interchange the two because I think it's the same thing.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you, man. Poetry and rap are branches of the same tree, and most of my friends who started out as poets are now rappers. I know for a fact that usually people start out as poets, and when they realize now poetry might not be popular, poetry is not really gonna play on radio for the most part, or on TV, or no, that's all right, and they shift into rap. But at the end of the day, they're just doing the same thing, just with different paces and on different beats or something. Your story is as much as the most similar story to mine as I've heard, especially the part about a book you wrote, like a notebook with your poetry going around. That happened to me. Got a few books stolen a couple of times and all that stuff. It's how my story goes. The only part with Diva is that I never really got the skill to actually like rap. I try a few here and there, and I realize, no, man, I'm terrible. I'm terrible. But then most people don't realize that, and they keep going, but they'll be, terrible. I don't know. Now move on. You shared a lot of stuff up there about how you started and everything, and the scolding that you got at the start. Obviously, people are gonna do that. They're only gonna believe in you when you start shining. Now, from the first time you recorded, you said you recorded your first track. It was on tape in Bulawayo. Now, take us from the first time you released professionally to now. How many projects have you done? Are there any projects that stand out? Are there any projects that's your favorite? If someone has never really gone through your catalog, take us through that.
So, well, after I recorded my first track, I already told you that my friends trolled me, but I took it elsewhere. I took it to my family. And my family as well. My father didn't like that. He didn't want me getting into showbiz. He gave me lectures about how bad showbiz is. My mom had hinted, though, before I went to the studio, that your dad might not like that. He's got a different philosophy on that kind of thing. So it was just a hide and seek thing throughout my high school, me having to record in other people's houses, home recording, because of course my parents were not going to financially support me with recording, since it's something that they didn't endorse. But that also made me want to learn how the processes go, the Fruity Loops, FL Studios, N-Track Studios, all the software that was there, Cubase and so forth. So I kind of found my tribe. I kind of found the people that also wanted to do that, and we started recording on our own. And a lot of the tracks that we recorded during that time are unfortunately no longer online. Bad data preservation habits. I regret that. I could have kept them. Right now I could have been showing you guys. Some of them are scattered online, but the most recent projects that you can really trace, I dropped 2 mixtapes. I dropped one in 2019, one in 2020, and one early this year. The one in 2019 is called Layers 1, 2020 Layers 2, 2021 Layers 3. And of course in 2014, I'm sorry I skipped 2014, I did something called the McPotar EP. That one is very available online. Its traces are not lost, but that's not a project that I like. I didn't enjoy it. I think it was rushed. So I went back to the dojo and I started learning the new delivery that was there. Okay, I don't even do the new delivery. Let me not lie. But I started improving on my bars because I think my delivery was a bit outdated. And now I do practice sessions every Friday or every weekend, rather. Let me just say weekend. And I can write a track to a beat and post it on the same day, make a lyric video on the same day. And I want people to consume that from Facebook. They don't have to leave their Facebook. And I'm not doing this commercially at all anymore. I now just do this as a therapy session most of the time. And if people want to listen to it, they can listen to it. Although in the near future, I might decide to drop my official debut album because all of these other projects I've talked about were EPs and mixtapes and so forth.
All right, I get the point where you say that sometimes you don't like a project that you put out. That's a certain point. I think it's a good sign. If you like everything that you put out, then you're not growing. The fact that you put out something a year ago should, when you listen to that, you have to listen and realize some errors, some mistakes, some places you fell back. You have to feel a certain edge to feel like, no, I should have done this, I should have done that. Not in a toxic way, but in a way that shows that you have grown from the point that you were at that point, like when you made that project. And now you talked about not having released an album officially, which is something that really intrigued me. Like, with the respect in the hip hop community that you have gotten over the years, how is that you haven't got an album? Is it because maybe you're waiting? Because most people be like, I want to blow up before I make my first album. I want to be signed before I release my first album, or I want to do something before I make my first album. What's your thought on that? Is it the reason why you don't have an album out yet? Because there are people that blew up was they, people like Holy 10. He already had like 3 albums already when he blew up. Is it 3 or 2 or whatever? But he had more than 1 album out, right? But people didn't know about that, and he's not really keen about pushing that agenda. Is it maybe because when you blow up, like, what's the? Let me listen to you lecture me about that. Like, what's the logic about around or behind you not having dropped an album yet?
There are variable factors why I haven't released an official album, but I'll start with the main one. The main one has to do with my weaknesses. My weakness is that when I create stuff, I get bored easily. The people that I've seen that can release albums are people that are patient and they are not as impulsive as I am. So they can make a track and put it aside and wait for it to be polished, make another track, wait for it to be polished, make another track in private, in silence. And when the whole catalog is over, they compile that, they wait for the mixing and mastering, and probably they're already making some budget. They're making some budget on the rollouts, the ones that are more organized, on the videos that they're going to do, and so forth. And that comes out as something that people are going to take more seriously than when I do what I do. Like I said, I just get on my computer on a Friday, find a beat. Probably I don't buy it because it's that impulsive. I probably get a free, royalty-free beat online, go ham on it, mix it and master it, and I'm not a professional in mixing and mastering, so that's obviously going to be terrible, and roll it out. So what I figured, if I'm ever to do an album, I need to be accountable to somebody that can manage me, that can manage my personality type and my impulsive nature, and say, no, Michael, we're doing this, and have a producer who doesn't give me back my tracks after I record them until that album is done, right? The other thing that has delayed me, I was inactive for some years. Like I said, I did something in 2014, then all these years I didn't do anything until 2019, was also because when I was blogging, because when you start blogging, sometimes, at least in what I experienced personally, artists didn't like the fact that I could be putting out music and blogging about them at the same time, Even more so because during that time I used to be very critical. I used to be one of those bloggers who could highlight other artists' flaws, and they say, no, you can't be a player and a referee. And I could see the sabotage, like they wouldn't push anything if I came out with music, but if I came out with a blog post, they would push that, and they would even highlight it or even mention it. I think you've heard that rhetoric, like bloggers think they're rappers, or bloggers wanna rap too. Yet they were forgetting that I only started blogging because I was a rapper who couldn't be represented out there, who didn't have an outlet. So I thought of making a blog so that we could all, just like you're a poet and you decided, let me interview other poets. Now imagine if other poets are now saying, no, so you can't put out poetry work because you're interviewing us. But at least for you, you're interviewing them. You're not, imagine if you were critiquing poetry and saying, nah, this poem, so I think that's one of the things. So I had to be inactive from blogging for a while. I think I stopped being active from blogging around 2019, 2018, deliberately, so that people would forget my blogging days and I could now come back and freely produce music. That's why I'm called my name, because the McPotar name has a certain stigma. When people hear McPotar, they always want to say the blogger. Even Mox, when I was on Mox's show at Star FM, they called me the blogger. When I was on, they called me the blogger, even though I was there for a different reason. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. But the main flaw, right, because I can't blame all this PR stuff, the main reason that I've not been able to release anything is truly what I said in the first place. My weakness is that I'm not organized.
Oh man, that's that's my weakness, is that I am not organized, man. I've never seen anyone who is so critical about themselves. Maybe I am, but not like publicly, like you're doing. You're just really brave. We should force some more of that. Before we move further, like I was talking to Malcolm, like on the podcast, on the episode that I did with him and Cynic, and he said you were the reason the project, the Trash project, came out earlier than planned. Take us into this, how did that happen? Is this because of this habit of this nature of yours that you are impulsive about putting out stuff, like? And I didn't talk to you about that, waiting for this moment. I know it's a controversial issue and you may say, I don't want to comment on that. Let's comment on that. Let's talk about that. Give me the juice.
Well, I am indeed an impulsive person, but that's not the reason that I released Malcolm's Trash instantaneously. What actually happened was Malcolm came into my inbox and he dropped that link, and it was a media fire link. I'd been looking forward to the album. He told me he was working on it. Where the album came from. He did explain that it came from threads that we had. There was an argument between Rimwase, Nigel Chaitezwi, me, and so forth about bars and lyrics, and I was saying people are incoherent, to which he said he was going to do an album to spite me, right? So he made me aware, because we talk every day, that he was making the album. Then when the album was finally done, he compiled it, or at least, okay, it wasn't done, but the premix, he put it on Mediafire, and then he gave me a Mediafire link. Now my assumption was, since it was a Mediafire link, I thought that was the final because it's a Mediafire link. So I took that link and I ran to Facebook with the artwork and that Mediafire link, and I promoted that. And Malcolm was not online for a while, maybe he wasn't checking his Facebook. So a couple of people went and downloaded that. Then later on, when he saw it, he came to the inbox and he said, yo man, you dropped the album before time, and I took down the link, right? And then the next day, that's when he released Trash. Now the thing is, if he had given me the link and told me that it wasn't for release, I was not going to release it. I've got a Mile album that I had before it was released. I think it's now out. Mile has given me his album before release. Janet Manyoa has given me her album before release. A lot of people in the music industry, Noble Styles has given me many albums before release, and I don't release them because they send the albums with a disclaimer, whether they are sending them to my WhatsApp, whether it's to my Google Drive. And I think what kind of made me think this was the final was the media fire link, because most people, for example, in Miles' case or even Munetsi, when he sent me the Mashingo thing, they usually send that via a Google Drive or to my Google account. So I assumed that Malcolm was giving me the final link, because he also gave me artwork. And I thought, well, I don't have to wait for him to give me a go ahead. Let me run with a message. But I think, yeah, we can judge and say that was a bit impulsive, but I guess it worked out well. We don't know. Maybe the environment was right. And look at what that album did. I love that album.
Man, I'm glad that it worked out, man. Like it got like over 20,000 streams in less than a week. Was it? People were really hyped up about that. I'm sure we gained more fans, new fans from that, which maybe could have happened if he had released the project the way he wanted to, or because it's a good project. But maybe the way you did it was the reason maybe why it blew up the way he did. So yeah, that's a plus. That's a win there. Now you talked about people in the music industry giving you albums before release. I think that's an occupational hazard, quote unquote, for people that work in media related outlets, especially like digital outlets. Maybe you're a blogger, you're a podcaster like me. People always like try to give you stuff before it's released so that you can help them push out there. Like that's an advantage, because you get to listen to stuff that hasn't seen the light of day. Now, like, what would you say is your role in the hip hop fraternity in Zimbabwe, or the music fraternity in Zimbabwe, and how it has evolved maybe the past 5 years? What are some of the things that you have touched and promoted and pushed and participated in to push the agendas that you have and the goals that you have, maybe for the industry, and the wishes and dreams that you have and want to see maybe the hip hop industry, the hip hop fraternity reach or grow to in the foreseeable future?
Well, my role, in as much as what I do from time to time, has always been the same at the core. It's to light a candle in a dark room. I don't complain about the darkness. I light a candle. The be the change philosophy, and that's what my father taught me. So in 2013, I saw that publications that were famous, big publications, radio, television, and some blogs that were already there, they preferred to talk about people that were already famous or from certain categories of music or genres that had more crowds and so forth. And even if they talked about hip hop, they would talk about hip hop people that were already famous, right? So it would be like the platform was the one that was gaining clout from the individual. Let's say a platform talks about Stana. It's not like it's helping Stana to do anything. And I would see some of the guys that were coming up complaining that they couldn't get airplay, or they couldn't get a newspaper article, or they couldn't get PR or any form of promotion from the big mediums. So I decided to take it upon myself to build a platform that was doing that. And with that, it meant that a lot of people now, some that are known, that are now being written about in those publications, that are now on television, or that have been on television or on rotation, were initially their first publication ever, or to be written about, or to be appreciated, was by me. And they can confirm, many of them can confirm that. They might not say it, some of them, they might not say it, but they know that they were here. So my role has not been different from yours, because I feel like that's why I like your platform, because that's what you're doing for all these people that you're bringing in here. If you're using a numbers game, or if you're using who's got numbers, you wouldn't have some of the people that you've had here. You purely brought some of the people here because you know that they're talented, and you know that they need to be heard or to be appreciated and you did that. And I think that's my role in the industry. And that's why I even branch into, I know that we said we're talking about hip hop, but that's why I even branched into things like animation, because I felt like at the time that I joined it, there were people that were doing it, but there were not that much. Now, yes, I see a couple of dudes now doing it, but at the time that I got into that, there were very few people. Another thing that I do, it doesn't mean I want to do everything either. I can even motivate someone who I see doing something that I feel needs to be done. So if I can't light the candle and I see someone who's capable of lighting that candle, my role is to motivate that person to continue go in that direction and to light that candle brighter and to replace that candle with a better light, with a more luminous light over time, just as I want to replace that candle with a more luminous light, so that we don't just become complainers like I'm slept on, this artist is slept on, people underrate so and whatever. I don't buy into that. If you read my blog posts, if you see me commenting, whenever someone says so and so is underrated, I go there and I say, by who? Because if you think that person is supposed to be out there, be the champion of that. Go out there and promote that. Like what we did with the Malcolm album. Instead of saying, people are sleeping on Malcolm, and then next thing you're saying people are sleeping on Malcolm, right? Next thing you go on YouTube, Jay-Z dropped something. No problem. It's okay to like Jay-Z, right? I'm a fan of Jay-Z too. Then you share the Jay-Z song. Then you share the Little Uzi song. But you never share in the Shingi song, the Shingi Mabima song, or the Shingi Ilmena song, or the Malcolm song, right? Or you never share in the Reaper song. But you're the first to go on a post that says those people are underrated. So it doesn't even mean somebody gotta be doing what we do, you and I, like having at a big platform level. To all the fans, even if you're not a good blogger, just that button, that share button, it's not painful. Just click it. Unmustared is out. Click the share button. Click it. What's the problem? So me, I think that's my role. And of course, what can change is where I want to go and put a light. But at the core, it's to light a candle where there's darkness.
I think that's a really good way to look at it. Like most people are like complaining, like, let's do that, let's do this, but do it so that people can see you do that and realize that we need to do this. We need to take action. We need to do whatever it is. Post a link to your status, share with a friend who might like it. The simplest thing, the littlest thing that you do can mean a lot to someone who's creating content, and most of people don't like realize that. So moving on, you talked a lot about you leaving the blogs and rapping casually and doing all that and all that. Like, take us into maybe the next 5 years of you as a brand, as a growing brand, as McPotar, as my name, as you, the whole you, like 360. Some of the things that you want to do, that you're planning to do, or that you're already starting to do, maybe on a level that you're an artist, or maybe on a level that you are a blogger. Now I realize that you started a new podcast. Take us maybe on the things that you would want to do vis-a-vis where you are right now and maybe the next few years.
Well, at present and going forward, I've been contemplating on rebuilding my brand, rejuvenating my brand, becoming more organized. Like I said, in the past, I was not organized. I wasn't even able to come out with an album. But my disorganization also made me lose a lot of opportunities that I could have had. So in as much as some people can look at me as someone who has done much, I could have done more. Because if I could get people like Munetsi, Janet Manyoa, Noble Styles, sending me their albums, Mile, and trusting me, or people asking me for information when I was disorganized, how much more can I do this at a higher level if I'm organized? So I've been thinking of things like that. So a big focus that I'm looking at is to create digital assets. And I'm even more motivated by the pressure that we have in this environment, where businesses are closing down, physical businesses are closing down and so forth. And it dawned to me that What if I had built digital assets in the past? Like all these years, I could have been building digital assets, but I don't live in regret. So now I need to light a candle in that area. Build digital assets. People are there around the globe, and in other countries, the economies are okay, and they are willing to consume content and to pay for it. So I want to build my content, organize my content, different types of content on different platforms where they are consumed in an organized fashion, in a fashion that will allow that content to be monetized, in a fashion that will allow other people to be employed, because I'll need help from other people. I'll need help from people who do the PR. I'll need help from people who do graphics. I'll need help from a lot of people that have different ideas from me to create a digital platform that can pay me on autopilot and pay other people on autopilot. That's what I'm looking to. So in the next 5 years, what I want to have is a passive income stream from my content, and not just a passive income stream that's sending in a few dollars, but a passive income stream that can allow me to sustain my lifestyle without ever working again.
I mean, that's a dream. I would love to do that too. Like, but I mean, I'm personally a person who wants to be hands on with things. I'm trying to like this. When I do this podcast, I think we had a chat offline of the podcast about like the ideas that I have with this podcast. I'm like, no, I'm not trying to earn money from this podcast. I'm not trying to get millions of hits or anything. I'm just trying to do you have something that keeps me in touch with the world around me, the things that I love. I love rap music. I love hip hop music. I love talking to artists. I love talking to creators. This is why I'm doing this, and I have something on the side that I'm actually focusing on that actually gives me the money. But the idea that you have about creating something that no matter what, it will give you money. Even if you go for a month without creating something, it's still creating revenue from the backlog of stuff that you put out. That's a very good plan. Now, let's talk about the comic pasta thing. There was this whole ruse about beef between Enzo Asha and Olitan, which, as I said on Facebook a few days ago, this is just something planned. Now it turns out they were hyping a sort of movie or documentary or something they want to put out, which was obviously it sounded curated because you know how like the way they did it was just like fishy. So, but you caught wind with Comic Pasta. Take us on that journey.
Well, Comic Pasta is a seasoned comedian, award-winning, very talented guy. He knows how to make people laugh. No lie. I enjoyed the track that he did, Haina Mambo. Watched it more than twice, shared it, told people to go and watch it. I loved that song. But what I didn't like was a certain interview that he did afterwards. And I watched it excitedly because I thought he was doing that in jest, like the song. I thought he was doing a parody, kind of like the same way that you can watch a Kevin Hart item where he's doing a rap parody. I think he's got so many rap parodies, Kevin Hart, if you look him up. Or there's so many comedians who've done parodies, Lonely Island and so forth, right? Trolling rap music, and that's not new, right? And that's always fun to watch. But when I watched this interview now, his energy, I was seeing that he's condescending to people that do hip hop. He doesn't value what we do. He thinks we're inferior to what he does with the way that he was framing it. He was framing hip hop as if it's an inferior art, and you know, from another artist like him, he's in Zim comedy. Zim comedy and Zim hip hop to me are the same, because most people, when they say they're going to watch a comedy, how many people say that they're going to watch a comedy and they mean Zim comedy? It's very rare, right? People don't take Zim comedy seriously in the same manner that they don't take Zim hip hop seriously. And because of that, when I was in Harare or when I was still in Zim, I used to mingle with people from Zim comedy. You can see them even in my friends list. They comment the Upepe Chules, the Kadems, the Tinayes, including him. I went for a workshop where they were teaching comedy theory, and I was sitting next to him, and he's a veteran. He knows his comedy. He knows all the types of comedy. I was lucky to sit next to him because he'd be tipping me off on what was happening in that lecture. It was a workshop organized by Doc Vikela and Simba the Comic King, and it was amazing, right? Of course, there was Pamberi Trust as well. Pamberi Trust sponsored that session. Tendekai Tati was there. I'm trying to remember the people that were there, but it was a good environment. So what I'm trying to say is I work with people that are in Zim comedy, and I thought of all people, Zim comedy people know our struggle because their struggle is our struggle. Of course, he has made some money from comedy. Him, pastor comic, right? Comic pastor. He's made money from comedy. He's made clout from comedy. Just like in hip hop, maybe Stana has made money from hip hop or he has made clout. But the average person in hip hop is still struggling to do that. So that's the same thing. It's not like Zim comedy is any better than Zim hip hop, because in Zim comedy, he's like the Stana of Zim comedy. And he blew up late as well, because at the time that I met him at that workshop, he wasn't even famous yet. So I just saw him. He wasn't famous. I wasn't starstruck, right? It was in the next year that he did a certain skit, and then it accidentally blew up. So I met him in 2015, but then in 2016, he did a Shamu skit about dancehall people, and it blew up, and ever since then he's never fallen. But he was already older than I currently am, I believe, if you do the calculations and so forth, right? So for him, even again, at the time that he blew up, it took him so long in his career to blow up. Why is he hating on young guys that are way younger than him, that haven't blown up, and telling them that they won't succeed, and saying that what they're doing is a waste of time? Because I believe that anybody, when they're doing their passion, everything that you do, you put your energy. So if somebody doesn't respect what you do, they don't respect your energy. So I felt like he disrespected us at that level, and that's why I had to call him out. And if you notice, if you go on that post where he replied, my first reply was actually respectful. I actually tried to remind him of the time that he was like all those struggling artists that he was making fun of. But in terms of comedy, comedy is supposed to be funny. There's dark humor, there's everything. There's a difference. So the song, I don't have a problem with it, right? But I've got a problem with the energy that he put out when he actually did an interview where he had an opportunity to say, no, guys, you can go and look at hip hop. You get what I'm saying? Because when Kevin Hart, even if Kevin Hart does a joke about Jay-Z in a comedy sketch or something that's supposed to be a comedy sketch or a parody, when he gets onto a real interview on Breakfast Club, he's not going to say, nah, hip hop is whack. He's going to say, no, I actually did that because I want you guys to pay attention to hip hop. I actually did that because hip hop is something you should be paying attention to, and I'm a fan of Jay-Z.
Bro, you sound like you have your PR guy besides you. Like, hey, PR guy, please let me talk to McPotar for a second, man. Like, of course, I mean, you were respectful, and up to this day, I don't think the post that you made was supposed to be offensive. It was just like, okay, it's funny, a funny post. And at first, I just like reacted to it, and I like leave first because I didn't even check the comments because I didn't think anyone would be offended by that. And then it went for like a day, and I realized, okay, there's drama going on in the comment section. I realized Comic Pastor was actually in the comment section. I was like, what? So, in that light, what do you think about maybe celebrities or big artists or popular artists or public figures that go out of their way to reply to fans, to defend themselves when fans say some stuff, like maybe on YouTube videos, on Facebook videos? I've seen people, especially in Zim. I'm not going to talk about people from outside, and I don't want to say names, but the people that actually go to reply, like say someone who's actually got a blue tick on social media and all that. Someone says something nasty in their comment section, they go in the comment section, they reply like, what that? What do you think about that? Is that bad PR? Is that bad temper? Is that like bad business? Like, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that's actually okay, and that's actually good because it shows the human side of the artists themselves. I don't believe in that whole PR facade of acting like you are unbreakable and you don't have emotions. So whenever I've seen someone get into it, whether it's Meek Mill or Nicki Minaj, get into it with a fan, I've always felt like they're authentic. But I guess it also depends on what kind of brand you are doing. If you're an artist, I think you can do that. If you are Econet, it's a bad idea because that's a broader, it serves a broader market. But I think if you're an artist, the reason that people fall in love with your songs in the first place is because you're putting your authenticity on the music. Or if you are another form of artist like a comedian, like Pastor Comic. In my case, I think he replied because, like I said, he knows me and I know him. I'm aware of him. We've met before, right? And we are both in the arts industry. And I've got a platform as well, right? Or used to have a platform that people used to look to for information. So maybe he took it from that level because we're not even friends on my new Facebook. But I don't know who told him that I had written that. So he knew how to find me. So it was not like I went onto his post, right? But to answer the question that you gave in general, I think it's okay for artists to do that depending on what image they portray. But if any image that you portray would cause you not to be yourself, then I think that would be an inauthentic image. I prefer artists that have an authentic image and that can stand for themselves. And I think even if you have a PR company, they should be aware that, okay, this is AKA's account, or this is what's the name, Cardi B, and the brand that Cardi B is, she comes for you. But maybe if you're somebody else, if you're Janet Manyoa, and you're supposed to be doing gospel and you're always supposed to be portrayed as, based on the message that you give as someone who doesn't have the darker traits, yeah, it's probably a good idea to be angry in the background. But on Twitter and on Facebook, you're going there to say a message of peace or a message that says that things are okay. I think Pastor Comic, like how he's handling things even now with the back and forth, even if it sounds insensitive with T Gonzi or with me, I think that makes him authentic, and I think that's why some people love him actually, because he can do that. He can answer a random person. I've seen screenshots of him on Zim Celeb answering a random person, and that's why people love him.
All right, man. Like the way I love the way you see it, and also the way I see it is ultimately people know what they're doing. Sometimes the way things pan out, you never know. It's in the grand scheme of things for somebody. They're building the bigger picture of who they are as a brand. So ultimately, if it's not like just like ranting or bashing out at people and knowing what you're doing, even like there are people that build brands off of that. People like RPUs, people like 6ix9ine, people like sometimes 50 Cent, the people that build brands around that. So maybe that's what he's trying to do, which is good. Now, before I ask, we wrap this conversation up and ask a few other silly questions. I want your comment on the current Zimbabwean hip hop scene right now. There are people that are blowing up. We've got your Holy Tens, your Pro Beats, your Votes JTs. You've got like who else is blowing up on the hip hop scene? There's your son Denim Hoods and Obi Davis getting signed with Block 18 Entertainment. What's your comment on the current state of Zimbabwean hip hop right now? Like on maybe on like a mainstream level, and what would you want to see in the future happening?
I feel very privileged and happy to have lived long enough to see the day that hip hop would be appreciated at a national scale in Zimbabwe and cause a discussion almost every week and trend in the discussion, in the main conversation almost every week like it does now. But I'm also grateful for the times that it wasn't doing that and we were looked down upon and nobody was recognizing what's happening in hip hop. because those are the times the Holy Tens were growing their muscle and getting ready. The Pro Beats were growing their muscle, and many other people that are yet to be known, because there are some people that are not yet known, but they are good enough for the mainstream. I'm not talking the underground guys. You know what I'm saying? It's just like in America, every year there's a new mainstream guy that you didn't know another year. But it's not like they started rapping when you started knowing them. So there's a lot of people under the surface. But because the Holy Tens, the Pro Beats, the Aceph have made people curious that this can't be the only one. This cannot be the only person who comes out of this breed or who comes out of this genre. They are going to keep digging. The journalists are going to be digging. And with a lot of collaboration and a lot of cooperation between us, even amongst ourselves, we can facilitate that process to happen faster. Me, I'm not one to be always happy to just have 3 people on the table. I want people to have an attitude of bringing other people to the table. I was reading something where someone was saying sometimes people are so happy to say, maybe if it's a woman, I'm the only woman in this board, and they feel so proud. No, bring in other women. Or I'm the only black man in this board where there are white people. No, bring in other people. Because there is no pride in being the only one. Even in real estate, a house gains value the more that other houses are also as valuable. So even if you built a house with the same plan in a neglected ghetto with sewage is running and whatever, even if it were the same as a Borodale house, it wouldn't be worth as much because of where it's built. So the mission is to turn the entire neglected ghetto into something that looks like that, so that it's as valuable. But I'm happy for the guys that are doing it, and I'm not saying that they're under pressure to pull others up, but I'm saying if they can, or anybody who can, and everybody should learn what they've done, and we should give everybody an opportunity to get on that scale. But as it is, I'm a happy man.
All right. In the spirit of getting done with this podcast, let's talk about maybe what kind of music did you grow up around? Like, what's the atmosphere like? Take us back to your childhood. We are there. What's the atmosphere like? What music's playing around the house? What music's playing around the neighborhood that shaped you into who you are and your music tastes? And maybe take us through maybe the random 10 likes that I ask people to see a better picture of them. Number 1, what's your favorite movie? Number 2, TV show, visual artist, color, meal, country, car brand, rapper, album, producer. Let's go.
Grew up in a diverse homestead where my dad is a big fan of Thomas Mapfumo. My mom was a big fan of Mechanic Manyeruke and the typical gospel stuff you'd find on Prime Gospel Show. My sisters liked gospel, but not the type that my mom likes. Maybe Hillsong, the type of stuff that you probably find at Celebration Center. Me, I was initially a fan of Kwaito, and then I got into hip hop. I don't know how I got into hip hop, and I started liking hip hop, and ever since then, I've been surrounding myself with hip hop. My favorite movie, it would probably be Inception, because I'm fascinated by the subconscious mind, and I think it attempts to explore the subconscious mind in its own way, or the concepts of dealing with your shadow and so forth, and that's my kind of thing. I haven't watched TV in a long time. Maybe when I was young, I'd say the types of TV shows that I used to like were comedies like My Wife and Kids and so forth. But I haven't been watching TV for years. When I turned, I'm turning 33 right now, but when I turned 23, I started having this thing of not watching television a lot, and now I don't watch TV at all. I don't own a TV set. So even with the movies, I watch them sparingly. I haven't watched a single movie so far this year, and we're in June. Last year, I don't remember if I watched any movie. If I did, it was probably a repeat of something. My favorite meal would probably be something like anything with chicken. And The country that I wish I was in, Canada. I wish I was in Canada. I would like to live in Canada, in Vancouver. And car brand, I'd obviously go for a Benz. My favorite rapper, Stoggy T. Favorite album. Kanye West, Graduation. Favorite producer, Rayo Beats. That's my favorite producer.
I honestly thought you'd be more. Uh, what's the word? What's the word? Conflicted about some of the things, but you seemed so. I don't know. You're so determined, so decided about some of those things, like favorite rapper, favorite producer. Like you seem to be a very opinionated person, but with this, you like kind of flowed, and I'm like, okay, I don't have any opinion on this. Like, you showed a really different side than what I know. This is why I always play this game because the whole of the podcast you can say whatever, but with what you like, we can truly see who you are. Man, thank you so much. We've reached the end of the podcast. Just maybe as a shout out to the people that has been listening and your fans and your family, what would you like to say as maybe your parting words from the podcast to your fans, to your family, to just someone who is supporting from Facebook or Instagram or any other place who's here just to support McPotar, your work, and just listening to get a maybe a deeper understanding of the man.
Well, if you thought the previous question was a hard question to answer, this one is the hardest question of the interview. Who do you want to give a shout out to? Because I want to give a shout out to so many people. However, let me just give a shout out to my mother and my father, because my father is the one who taught me how to write. When I was in grade 1, he used to give me stuff to write. Grade 2, he used to nurture my writing. He just didn't want me in showbiz, but he's the one who invented who I am in terms of writing from the start. And he had to deal with that monster when the kid said he wanted to do showbiz, But, he himself is a great writer and a great illustrator in his spare time, even though he's an accountant, right? Shout out to my dad, shout out to my mom, shout out to my sisters, my nephew, my friends, the ones that are close to me, everyone who's there for me when I need them, my girlfriend, and everybody who makes it a point that they give feedback on my posts, whether in agreement or disagreement on Facebook, and they put a like emoji, a heart emoji, a laughter emoji, an anger emoji, or they come to my inbox to praise me, to commend me, or even to reprimand me when they feel like I'm on the wrong side of things. Shout out to you. And to everybody who appreciates bars, shout out to you, special shout out to you. And anybody who doesn't like bars, there's no shout out for you.
You hate it, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't like bars, McPotar is not shouting you out. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of this podcast. It has been awesome chatting with the McPotar. Man, wow. Can't believe this finally happened. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Unmastered the Podcast. I am your host, Tendes Mbandu, aka the UltraPoet. Go follow us on social media at the Heat Trader on Facebook, on Instagram, on yeah, pretty much that. And also on YouTube, go subscribe on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We need more subscribers. Go rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, ciao.